14 men, including a former president, will go on trial in Burkina Faso from Monday over the assassination in 1987 of Thomas Sankara, the country's revolutionary leader and a Pan-Africanist icon. It will be nearly 34 years to the day since Sankara was gunned down during a push by the then erstwhile comrade and close friend, one of the most shocking episodes in a country well versed in political brutality. Suspicions have long been directed at Sankara's successor as president, Blaise Compaoré, who ruled the impoverished Sahel state for the next 27 years. Compaoré was toppled by a popular uprising in 2014, and he fled to neighboring Ivory Coast, which granted him citizenship. He's the chief accused among 14 figures in the trial, which will unfold at a military court in the capital, Ouagadougou. The 70-year-old, who has always denied any part in Sankara's brutal death, will be tried in absentia. On Friday, he announced through his lawyers that he would not attend the trial. And to talk about the trial and more, we're now joined by African Affairs analyst Advocate Sipho Mantula. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. For many, it's come 34 years later, but perhaps some relief that at least the process of getting justice has finally come.
Correct, Brother Peter. Jambo Africa to the viewers of the globe. I think this is a very important historical timeline, despite about yesterday when his lawyers raising the issue that the summons are not clear. They've only been summoned to attend this trial. But let's look back at the wife of Sankara, Miriam Sankara, and his two sons, and the international lawyers who have been behind the family between 1997 to 2006, when they went before the United Nations Human Rights Committee in 2006. But in 1997, they went to the government of Ouagadougou to open this case, claiming that between 1987 and 1997, there was a lull. There was no public inquiry into the assassination of Thomas Sankara. So the family was happy, but the lawyers are raising the what we call in law hypothesis of return, that even if you don't have Blaise Compaoré, this trial becomes more complex, more difficult, because as a primary suspect, he was a very close friend to Thomas Sankara. He was one person after the killing of Sankara on the 15th of October. He denied the family two key things, and those are the things that our viewers must know. Sankara was buried so quick that even his grave was not marked. Secondly, when the family at some point were pushing for the exhumation of his bones, Blaise Compaoré again denied them that access. So if one look at that link of him being a primary suspect, that gives the family at least a closure, but at the same time, he's still in denial, and you have other 12 suspects who have to appear before the military court, which again, finally, Brother Peter, the issue of jurisdiction we should look into, because extradition, jurisdiction have been one of the contentious issues on this trial.
Why do you think Ivory Coast gave him a place to stay and are going to protect him?
Remember, Brother Peter, he has been elevated as the mediator of West Africa, ECOWAS, during his tenure. Blaise Compaoré worked on the crisis in Ivory Coast. He worked on the crisis in Mali, Sahel region. And during that time of 2014, remember, it was that era of the third termism. Most of West African presidents were having this appetite of the third termism. But come Compaoré in 2015, Compaoré tried to engage Ivory Coast because they have what we call an extradition legal mutual agreement. I don't think they have exploited very well, because there is a fear that when Blaise Compaoré come and answer those charges of 1987, he still have the charges of 2014 as well to answer, which one of his second-hand men, Gilbert Ouahadindere, is still behind bars. So the linkage Ouattara, but I don't think it is serving any justice to the people of Burkina.
So people want justice, and I wonder if people will be satisfied if this trial does happen, it gets concluded, and gets found guilty, and he's sitting in another country. I'm pretty sure that there will be pressure mounting for him to be brought home.
Definitely, there will be pressure, but viewers will recall a Chad president who have just passed on this year. When there was a crisis, even when his trial was supposed to have been held in Chad, but there was a special tribunal in Dakar where he was exiled in Senegal. That is Ivory. And if you look at the role of Ivory Coast being part of ECOWAS, Burkina Faso, I think if there was no need for him to go to Ouagadougou, they should have thought of taking him to Ivory Coast, rather to have a special tribunal of the military. Hence, earlier I raised the issue of jurisdiction, because at some point they were raising that not the common courts can listen to this matter because the crime scene was at the military barracks, what they call the military establishment. And I think that's why we are still grappling with this issue of saying justice for Sankara has been called for more than 33 years now. And I think the family will definitely want to see justice by all means. The issues of reparation and other 12 family members who were killed with Sankara, because I think we've been always focusing on Sankara, but we have other family members, 12 officials who were with Sankara on that night, who were ambushed and killed. So that issue of the will of justice within the ECOWAS region must be strengthened to the sense that President Alassane Ouattara must melt the coffee and look that it is the time of equal rights and justice to the Sankara family.
When we started talking, you talked and mentioned, I guess as a lawyer you'd know, is circumstantial evidence, but is there direct evidence linking Compaoré to Sankara's death?
Not really that has come to the fore, but remember when the young president Emmanuel Macron visited Ouagadougou in 2017, he raised the issue of classified documents, intelligence documents that were supposed to be declassified to be shared. But the issue that I raised earlier of those facts of him being linked as a primary suspect are the issue of why they were so quick for him not to allow the family to exhume the body. Why was he even not allowing the grave or to give Sankara a proper burial? The issue is that the soldiers who went in there, they wanted to claim that there were military orders given by Blaise Compaoré. And some of them have died, by the way. Some of the accused military officials who were part of these assassinations are busy dying now, and most of them are not clear about how can they implicate him. But Gilbert, he's the one who can attest to his right-hand man, or to his boss by then was Blaise Compaoré. But like I said to you, Peter, the military prosecution might be having more information that France might have shared this this classified information, as you are aware that France is claiming to be renewing ties with Africa, and those ties might include the ties on the wheel of transitional justice and the mysterious political assassination of the 37-year-old Thomas Sankara.
Is there any political capital that President Compaoré might gain from this?
Definitely. Remember that it was his campaign ticket, it was his political messaging in 2020 when he was even contesting for power. He went further to appoint a minister of reconciliation, and that minister, they emphasized that one of the areas that they will try to do is to bring reconciliation between those who were involved in the murder of Thomas Sankara. And I don't think Blaise Compaoré and the international community that is blocking this trial to go on, they are not looking at this opportunity, this advantage of extending that wing of reconciliation. So I think President Compaoré has been trying to engage Alassane Ouattara, but it goes back to look at, maybe Blaise Compaoré wants to claim what Peter will say in law is the immunity from prosecution in 3 levels. He was the former president, he was a former Minister of Justice during the time of Sankara, he was even in the presidency during the time of Sankara. So I don't think that will hold the test for him to be claiming immunity when actually this is a long-standing trial that actually the post-mortem was even falsified. They claimed that Sankara died of natural death, which it was not true. We know very well how Sankara was brutally killed, the same like Lumumba. Many African leaders have been killed brutally, sometimes by their own friends who were colluding with the Western powers.
What do we know about the other 13?
The other 13 are the military officials whom their names are known, but they are not so clear than Gilbert Tindere, who has been very close to Blaise Compaoré. The other 12, like I've said to you, they were, one can say, they were abused by Blaise Compaoré during that military operation of overthrowing Sankara. Knowing the history of Burkina Faso, that any military coup will always have casualties, but what has happened is that those are currently in Burkina Faso. There is no issue of extradition or they will be tried in absentia. It is only the primary suspect, Blaise Compaoré, that we know more of, but the others have not been profiled as we would have expected.
And I suppose the challenge of having a trial 34 years later is the defendants are mature, much, much older, and people remembering things, it becomes difficult.
Correctly, but remember earlier on my introduction, I said Miriam Sankara and the 2 children, when they went to the Human Rights Committee, it was 2006, they brought that memory as well to say that even if this trial had taken so long, what is so important, it is how he was killed that we will want to know and why. And this justice for Sankara, I think like you are saying, yes, there will be the so-called aspects of amnesia that we can't recall, we don't remember. But what is important, this is one African Che Guevara that used to be known the father of African Revolution. So there is no way those who were implicated in this assassination, they can claim ignorance or they can claim amnesia that they cannot recall what happened. When actually even going through military court, I don't think it will even be a long trial because in terms of the military, precision is very clear. What was the end result? Why there was this political assassination, which others are calling that this trial, it is political, but others will say it's political and at the same time judicial trial because there was the right to life that Sankara he had. It was guaranteed. So the right to life of Sankara was threatened. He was killed. The family have lost their loved one, and children lost their father, and the people of Burkina lost the father of revolution. So their memory, it is still there when you look at the art, creativity, the gravities in the world are still calling to justice for Sankara. So one can look at how it is important for those who are being accused to come forward and testify. And that's where I say the issue of transitional justice, Brother Peter, might be relevant for them to admit what they have done in 1987.
All right, I'm sometimes tempted to think of people like Steve Biko, where you have a young person who was quite towering in influence, and we often wonder what South Africa, what West Africa perhaps might have been if Thomas Sankara had lived. Perhaps in closing, just give us a sense of why it was such a loss for Burkina Faso, and not just his country, but I guess the region and the continent.
Brother Peter, interestingly, when Sankara came into power in 1983, 1984, when he was in Harlem, in New York, he spoke about the apartheid system of South Africa. And if you look by him changing the name of Upper Volta to the land of the honest man, upright man, Burkina Faso, And when you look at the legacy that he left as a young man at the age of 37, it was how he was able to challenge the international UN system on the foreign aid. He was able to bring the issue of leadership parity, of bringing women as leaders in this African continent. He was able to deal with what we call opulence by the executive and the leaders. So he had already ruffled feathers within even his party. And that's where I think the lessons learned is that you can trust them all, but don't trust those who are close to you, like Blaise Compaoré, Dindira, and others. I think one thing that failed Sankara is that he had too many trustworthy people around him, despite he known Blaise Compaoré as Area 76 from Morocco. But the problem was that he trusted most of his people who were around him, but he was careful that what he has said in the OAU summit in 1986 as well, it has ruffled the French powers. Because remember, France was not happy about what Sankara was saying. United Nations was not happy. Many European countries were not happy about Sankara. So I think the youth of today must not just emulate Sankara, but must understand what Sankara stood for: the emancipation of women, the nationalization of the land, the issue of health as we are under COVID-19, how he prioritized health. And finally, Brother Peter cannot run away from environmental consciousness, the planting of trees, how he was so concerned about Mother Nature. I think that's the lesson we can learn from Sankara, and we see Ethiopia is moving on that level by planting trees. So I think that's how we can remember Thomas Sankara, Noel Estudore. Asante sana, Brother Peter.
Asante sana. Thank you so much, and we'll chat again soon. Thank you for your time. All right. It's been 34 years in the making, but the trial will begin on Monday. Thomas Sankara was assassinated at the young age of 37 by someone close to him. And it reminds us of Julius Caesar when he said to Brutus, "Et tu, Brute," you as well, Brutus.